Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first podcast. My name is Greg Braun. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at C3 Solutions. And today I'm joined by Neil McEvoy, who is our Vice President of Business Development. And Neil, actually, a few jobs ago, used to actually be a C3 customer. Right, Neil?
Yeah, I was about 15 years in UK parcel industry. Various jobs, but managing large-scale operations, and I stumbled across C3, and I guess 10 years ago we started conversations on the very subject that we're going to talk about today.
Right. So Neil and I today are going to be talking about an industry survey report that just recently came out titled The State of Dock and Yard Management 2025. It's actually a very interesting report that has come out where there were 170 businesses were surveyed, and they were from different industries, including manufacturing, the retail, grocery, and distribution. And one very interesting thing, Neil, is that over 2/3 of the respondents were senior level managers. So the real executive kind of an angle to this report. So really looking forward to getting into this. I mean, and Neil, you and I, we've had a lot of different conversations over the years, right? It's almost been like 15 years now. We've been talking about this off and on. It's probably the first time that the conversation has been recorded. But
Yeah, and what's I guess stands out, apart from some of the unique information that we'll get onto in a minute, one thing that's pretty interesting is it's the same sort of problems that we were talking about back in 2010 or 2015. Like people are still doing yard management and dock scheduling on spreadsheets and with clipboards and radios, which is, especially in today's ultra automated, ultra digital world, it's kind of bizarre. But again, there's loads of rooms of opportunities for the people that are, have answered the questions and participated in this survey to really improve their operations. So, Greg, so what were the sort of the key findings out of this are interesting? What did you make of the sort of top challenges that our industry is facing, and how does that relate into the sort of conversations you have on a daily basis at C3?
well, I mean, first of all, I'm glad to say that I wasn't necessarily surprised by any of the findings. Um, I mean, and again, this is there's no, I guess there was really no secret here. Companies are having issues with manual inefficiencies. I was, almost 36% of the respondents had challenges with a manual operation, and again, that fits perfectly with what we encounter almost on a daily basis, right? And when you kind of drill down on that, then you're talking yard congestion. I mean, again, that's a major issue that 34% of people, of the respondents, had challenges with that. Labor shortage. I mean, hey, we've been talking ever since the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Labor shortages have been bad in almost every industry. And hey, the yard, it's tough, right? I mean, that yard hostler type job, it's the normally it's retire or like truck drivers that are soon to retire,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
in some of the more urban areas, it's a tough job to fill. There's a lot of turnover, and if you don't have systems, it's a challenge. And clearly, that's what we were seeing. Lack of real time visibility. I mean, that is a classic, and again, it was a major point that came up. So yeah, there's really, again, thankfully, there were no surprises in this. If I would have, it read this survey and found out a bunch of things in here that I'd never heard of before, I would have been a bit concerned about what are we doing wrong, which there was none of that. That's all good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, hey, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us just to kind of drill down on this and talk about what, some of the real meat of what came out of this report. It was really interesting. I mean, some of when you look at it, the biggest challenges when you talk about, because the respondents, or, the people who were surveyed, were asked, what are their biggest challenges when it comes to yard and dock? And again, and unsurprisingly, um, one of the biggest item came out of there was the inefficient manual processes.
Yeah.
Number one.
But it's still like, I guess if you talk to people outside because, we have family members who aren't in the industry and they use online retailing websites and they go to these stores and they see adverts about, the brands, and these brands, familiar, very familiar names, have got ultra high, sort of complex and automated systems, but you go to their facilities and they're still doing things on paper. right? So, I think that that's a hard thing for people to understand, but for us, it's kind of daily life. And because these systems are like you're putting manual over manual over manual, you create these silos, and then before you know it, you've got an ultra complex web of inefficient systems, few of them digital or automated, and then you're bound by this, you're tied up in it. So, you know, I guess, Greg, a question that's often asked to me by prospects and clients is, what does automation look like, and what does it do for you when you're replacing that manual system? So, what are the key things we're replacing, basically?
Well, I mean, the key thing that we're replacing is the clipboard and the walkie-talkie, the two-way radio, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's the big item, and it's been that way since and for the last 25 years. That's still the main thing that we replace, and unfortunately, for a lot of operators out there, is that is the state of computing for these guys, and it's always, well, how we do this at C3. Oftentimes, in our initial presentations and the discovery calls, we try and make prospects feel comfortable with this because they're not alone,
Yeah.
and that is what we encounter on a regular basis. So yeah, that's kind of the state of the art. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's the odd operation out there where if you're using, say, one of the tier 1 or even tier 2 WMS systems, they might have a yard management module. And so people do use that, but unfortunately, there's a reason for best of breed, and a lot of times those modules are kind of afterthoughts, and that doesn't usually, it doesn't usually convert well into a sustainable system. So, some of the other things, if you looked at the biggest challenges that came out of this were things like yard congestion, and just think about, I mean, Neil, you managed a yard.
Yeah.
So you know that in a manual operation, you can make it work when things are running at kind of a normal operational level. But when you hit peak levels,
Yeah.
like yard congestion, it's just a killer. I mean, you can't deal with it.
Exactly. And I think that if even if you've got the best team, you've got the best experience, like you say, when you get to these levels of volumes where, you're creaking at the seams in terms of space, your visibility goes, you only need one trailer to be in the wrong place, one driver to make a mistake, or everything just grind to a halt due to space where it becomes inoperable. And who suffers? The team inside the warehouses, they've got no work, they
Yeah.
kind of lose momentum. But the people downstream that really suffer are the stores, the end customer, because they don't get their stock, their delivery, their food, whatever it will be. So, and that I think ties nicely into the labor shortage, because it's not a glamorous job
No,
to go and
not
work at
at
these
all.
places where there's a lot of panic. You don't have one version of the truth because you don't have visibility, because you're using multiple manual systems. And the training and risk involved in operating in this infrastructure or lack of infrastructure is quite tough, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's the managers are stressed. There's a lot of stuff going on. And because you can't see a snapshot of what reality is like on your yard, you just see trailers, you're blind,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
A
Totally.
trailer, a loaded trailer, an empty trailer look the same with the door down, right? So having a system, best of breed, with real-time visibility is kind of the only way where you can really put your finger on the pulse and say, yep, my operation is doing well. My team are maintaining their throughput. My customer is going to be happy tomorrow when they receive their goods. So, labor shortage is key, but you've got to fundamentally use the best of your labor. You've got to make sure they want to work at your company because you have good systems. They've got to have a clear and obvious task to do. The confusion breeds more confusion, and it kind of doesn't work for keeping teams aligned to their goals. And again, I think that it's the delays, right? You only need one segment of the chain to go wrong for the delays to happen. And like, particularly in peak periods, that's when whether it's Christmas or it's summer season or it's sales, that's the time when your systems, your operators are at their most valuable to the organization, because it's game time. You need to show up at these big times, and manual systems are creaky enough, or, less than best of breed systems obviously don't give you the automation and the visibility you need. So it's no doubt in this report that operators have these
Yeah.
concerns, and they have these challenges and want a system going that they're going to invest money in to solve and eradicate these challenges.
Well,
Um,
one thing I found interesting was the whole concept of visibility. That came up a lot.
yeah,
And again, that to me, no surprise. but it came up also in the fact that operators were saying, hey, with that lack of visibility, they have the reaction time is so limited, right? I
Yes.
mean, so
Yeah.
and again, these kind of things always multiply during peak operational times. So, you just compound those issues by, now you've got a manual process, you've got no visibility on it. It's a recipe for disaster. And again, we see it all the time, unfortunately. You lived it
Yeah.
a good portion of your
Of
career.
course. Yeah.
So it's yeah, a lot of challenges there. And again, I mean, when you look at, some of the things the respondents were asked about, again, limited or automation was people were yearning for automation, and there's just no way you can do that.
And just the idea that you're a lot of these operations, and again, I lived parcel post every day for nearly 18 years, and the vast majority of those yard operations, dock operations on the, on the gate inside the warehouse, they're often repetitive manual tasks, right? They are tasks that repeat and they have a pattern to them. And again, there's some exceptions and anomalies, but the vast majority is rinse, repeat, rinse,
Yep.
repeat. And, the fact that you're expecting a team of, let's say, multi-skill, multi sort of responsibilities to do all these like a robot and not make errors and have full visibility and then communicate all that information in real time to everybody that's involved is a pipe dream,
Yeah,
right? It's just
exactly.
not possible. And I think, business leaders, I think they see that, they understand it, and they live it every day. And, it doesn't just affect your bottom line, it affects your business continuity, it affects your customer satisfaction, and your ability to operate, right? It's I remember in my days in parcels, taking a new customer around our facilities, and one of the guys asked the CEO who I was with at the time, so who's your yard management? And the CEO couldn't really answer. And he looked at this state of the art parcel sortation warehouse. He was like, this is brilliant. So you must have a robust,
Going
dynamic
on.
digital system. And he was like, we kind of have a few guys in with some computers and stuff. And you wouldn't believe that that is what a lot of operators are doing. And I guess what this tells us here is that there's still a huge opportunity to get in contact with a good supplier, talk about your requirements. And I guess what you and I live every day, Greg, working in the sales team for C3, it's just understanding that a one size fits all off the shelf system doesn't really cut
No,
it,
no, no, not at
right?
all.
And I guess moving into the next segment of this report, what do businesses look for when they're looking for dock and yard management is, they and this was, I guess, nothing was too surprising, but the thing that maybe surprised me slightly was that usability or ease of use was just pipped functionality to being the top response in that question of these business
Yep.
leaders. So clearly, having something that's comfortable, intuitive, visibly interesting and understandable to the users is so key, right?
Oh, 100%. Because I mean, and that's one of the things we've encountered throughout the history of C3. I mean, there's often times when we've came into an operation where it's not their first. I mentioned earlier how we don't replace. We rarely replace other systems. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But it also is the case that there's always these stories of, oh yeah, a few years ago we tried to do that. And we tried to implement a system and it didn't work out. And the reason it didn't work out, again, it was, again, no fault to that other system. It wasn't necessarily best of breed. It wasn't a system where it was probably coming from a really reputable WMS, and no one had put the effort into saying, hey, what's different about the yard to the warehouse? I mean, there's obvious differences. There's a lot of similarities,
Yep.
but there are differences. And, at C3, I think that's one of the things we do really well with our whole implementation process is we make sure that we clearly define the business processes so that when we actually model and configure the application, what we end up delivering is very much what they need to see and what they're used to seeing.
Yeah.
So that now you've got a very optimal version of what they were doing manually, so that it's something that makes sense and that can be easily integrated into the operation, and it's adopted. Like this is the
Yeah, and for the user, they're not going live with this new system and a whole ton of new processes,
no,
right?
exactly.
It's going to be something familiar. And I think something as well where, okay, we're talking a little bit like, okay, I already have a bolt on to my WMS that says it's YMS. And, I think the message that comes across in another big ticket part of the what businesses are seeking, the lack of integration capabilities. So, oh, I want to use this part of the system because it already features in my product suite. Well, I think if you can find a supplier, a vendor, C3 do it fantastically well, who is dynamic and integrates really well kind of any system that you use and can do it in a way that's seamless. You don't need a bolt-on. You need a best of breed for your WMS, just like you need a best of breed for your YMS.
Yeah.
And that flexibility and skin in the game experience of doing these things with big, medium, small-sized businesses is key for success.
Yeah.
And I think the people that are in this sample, they're in on the buyer journey for many different pieces of software, hardware, technology all the time. So that is so important. And I think that that's something we see day in, day out from talking to prospective clients and clients alike.
No, exactly. Well, there's a couple things that really stuck out for me. Just taking a slight step back into the common challenges. One thing that I was actually surprised about, which was when the people were asked which area of the supply chain is the area that you most need automation. WMS or warehouse came up number one. Not surprised about
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But yard came up as number two. That I was honestly surprised about.
yeah. Me too.
It was something that, well, it's encouraging, but, it's good to see that people are acknowledging that is an area that needs automation.
And I think if you'd have asked this question maybe even 2 or 3 years ago, that might not have finished at number two. That
No,
might
I
have been
agree.
further down. So I think people are starting to wake up. I think there was a shake up during the pandemic where supply chains and logistics suddenly became a little bit more in the forefront of everybody's ideas that, oh, wait a minute, the products that I use every day or every week, they have to come from some kind of supply chain. And okay, we
Right.
do that already, right? We work in the industry, but making sure that your yard is not a bottleneck is so important to all of the aspects. It's like the heart and the arteries around it. You get one of those things clogged up, the whole body is crippled. You're in big trouble. So,
No, and that's something again with C3, we've been from day one, we always knew we had to have like, because integration is a big point in here, and that again makes total sense. We've always put a lot of emphasis on integration just because we always knew we were in the middle of this ecosystem. So on the one side, you're being fed by, say, TMS or WMS. On the other side, conversely, you might be feeding, sending information into another system, whether it's a WMS or what have you. So we don't produce information, but we take it, add value to it, and send it on.
yeah.
And you use the metaphor of the artery system. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of big organs out there, and we act as the artery system. And if the yard doesn't work, it doesn't work well for a lot of those other end systems out there. So that was reassuring again to see all that. And when you looked at you mentioned that ease of use was the top item when people were asked what they were looking for in terms of their level of satisfaction with the system. It came in at like 65%. The second one where that came in was the effectiveness of the implementation process, which again we put a lot of emphasis on that. I mean, we
And as a customer, I mean, one of the most amazing parts of the entire buyer journey, right through to delivery and multiple site rollout for me in my former life in parcel operations, was just how well thought out the C3 methodology was. Ensuring that all the design and process mapping was integral to the full journey from start to finish. And, whether it was, a little bit of best practices from other, C3 been around since 2000. That, in my world there, I was dealing with lots of other vendors for other things that would have been around 5 minutes, which again, every company has to start somewhere, but it's a definite benefit to be dealing with someone who's got that level of experience and prior knowledge. So yeah, don't underestimate that. Like the difference between the people that are dump and run, here's a system, deal with it, and the guys that will hold your hands and work with you to deliver a system where, there's total synergy between, the scope, the design, the testing, the training, and then the go live, it's imperative to success. And one of the things that comes out as well, cost and affordability. Well, I'll tell you one way to increase your costs building a system is to try and take 2 or 3 or 4 bites of the cherry and implementing it,
No, exactly.
which is common.
No, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we've seen that a lot of times. There's that kind of urban legend out there of why why a yard system can never work and so forth. But yeah, thankfully we've proved those wrong for the most part. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, hey, this report, there's just a lot of great stuff in this report. Maybe the last few things we can touch on here is some of the things that when the respondents were asked, like, what are the 3 most important features you're looking for in a dock and yard system? Again, the winner, real time yard visibility. Ta-da!
Yeah.
That was the main point. I mean, again, it just keeps coming back all the time. Makes perfect sense. Some of these, honestly, I would have not. I'm somewhat surprised that say yard efficiency didn't come up as the top one, but hey,
But when you can't see, I mean, just
no,
from an
exactly.
operator's
Well, you
perspective,
got to start
if you can't see what's going on in this kind of storm, then it's hard to see what efficiency
Yep.
you need, really, I guess.
Integration came up number 2. Again, not surprising. Automated dock scheduling came up 3. Hey, that's I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Reporting and analytics, number 4. So I mean, all good things, and all things that hey we do at C3, and we like to think we do them well. We're constantly trying to improve, but
Yeah, and
nonetheless,
I think Greg, when you make a good point there, that I think some of the things roll into other, like if this sample was people who were using best of breed YMS, you might find that they're actually a lot more granular in their, okay, I want to go into more data, or I want to go into more reporting, but just that it seems to be a byproduct of the manual nature of these yard operations just means that yard visibility is the top of everybody's list. Knowing what's where, what's priority, what's
yeah,
not, how to locate my stuff, how to get the throughput moving, how to make sure I don't miss a shipment, a load, an outbound or inbound route is so key for operators. Is where the real big headaches are, and it's where people are hemorrhaging money, right? Because what do you do? What does an operator do? They overstate their requirement for things because they need a little bit of buffering because they have no visibility. So you always plan on the worst. And the same goes if you look at the cost per shipment, the cost per truck during peak periods, they're always hugely over the rest of the year because you cannot get that time wrong, right?
correct,
So the cost
exactly.
of failure, the cost of inefficiencies is, hugely increasing around that time. So, this is where best of breed, I guess, where we talk about C3, dock and yard constantly is that, where you really gain value from us is in the biggest pressure times. The times where you need your information to be real time from your supplier, from your carrier.
Yeah,
When you want to have ETAs, right? You want to know when stuff's getting to your site so you can manage that properly. Yeah, you need your gate flowing really, really well. So all this stuff, real-time visibility, like within our product, there's just several segments to it. Not just one element. There is multifaceted kind of visibility elements to C3's platform that, just gives, whether you're an exec and you want the high level, okay, what site's performing well on a given period, or you need that granularity of, I run 6 docks on the inbound section, and I want to know what's next on, what's the status of all the stuff that's in motion, and how are my guys performing? Like in a snapshot, just that click of a button on my phone, on my tablet, on my laptop. That's what the operators are craving. And unfortunately, without a system, you're never going to get that.
definitely.
Yeah. So
Maybe the last thing we should maybe talk about was the whole concept of sustainability is always a big factor, right? So the question was basically asked: is sustainability an important factor in your decision making process? And yeah, it was, and sustainability, you can call that whatever you want. I mean, it's always been a major factor for our customers. Is we want to do more with less. So that means, hey, we shouldn't, our trucks should be, we want to save fuel. We want to be burning less fuel. We want to be using less, our trucks less, basically. If we can get more out of out of the existing equipment we have. We don't have to invest in more trucks and so forth. I mean, that's the big goal out there, is we want to be able to save people money and by using less resources.
Yeah, and all of the, I guess, the key hard benefits that I found when I sort of was, looking back after the first 6 months, 12 months of using C3 at the parcel company I worked for, was all about those. Like, okay, how much idle time with trucks because they were queuing at the gate? Okay, that was reduced. Miles traveled by shunter vehicles, that reduced.
exactly.
Fuel use, tire use, all these things that if you're looking at your CO2 credentials, you're looking at your green credentials, or as is the case now with a lot of companies that want to do business with a courier or a 3PL, they want to say, well, how can you prove to me so I can prove to my customers that I'm more green than I was before, 2 years ago, whatever. We add tons of value there, not only just in making sure that you get that return, you reduce your use of fuel and all those things, but also that you can prove it, right? Because a lot of the thing is, it's great to say that we're, more environmentally friendly, but if you can't prove it with a, bona fide report, then it's just a tagline, it's a comment, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of sustainability is core to what we do. And just one thing I wanted to touch on as well is something that as a buyer once upon a time and now as a seller of software is the vendor reliability. Like we almost on a couple of times, didn't get with the right partner in a few different acquisitions, processes. The best thing that I ever was advised is just like if you're going to buy a car, the best, if someone owns that car, that's a much better insight to that than the guy at the dealership who's selling it you for obvious reasons, right?
Right.
So if you can talk to a user, someone who has worked with the team, whether it be the product or the project, the interactions you had with the potential vendor is so key to this, because there are a lot of people who claim to be a YMS or a dock scheduling supplier, but when you scratch beneath the surface, it's maybe not their core business, and if you want to have all the key elements that are in this report, scratching beneath the surface here, you probably need to be with the best of breed.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Neil, hey, it's been
it's a pleasure.
it's been enjoyable here talking about. I mean, first of all, it's just amazing that this report is out there.
Oh, it's gold, eh? And if you're out there looking for a system now, I mean, this is or even trying to improve the system that you have currently. I mean, this has got so much information and data that you could really help yourself. Pointing in the right direction and understanding what's right, not just for you, but what's out there in the market. So yeah, really good. Thanks, Greg. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun. We have to do this again.
I would say we do.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.